Thousand Autumns, is a Meng Xi Shi novel. This is an audiobook made by fans for other fans. Disclaimer. The main couple of the story is made up of two men. If you don't like it, don't listen. Thank you. Remember, subscribe and click the bell to stay updated on all the new releases. Enjoy. Chapter 96. Shen Chiao paused, recognizing the other, also smiled. Li Qingyu, long time no see, how have you been? I'm very well. Li Qingyu was not a very expressive person, that smile just now was quite rare. His smile quickly vanished, returning to this usual calm, unruffled appearance, but one could tell that he was in a cheerful mood. Shen Qiao's impression of Li Qingyu was good. That day, although the other started off by underestimating him, later did lend him his sword, which assisted him in his victory against Duan Vinyang. He was a straightforward person, but wasn't good with words, had a bit of a solemn appearance, but in truth was an outside cold inside warm kind of person. While I was in Chang'an, I received a lot of help from Su Qiao's family, and was able to bring Qi Lang out of the ambush. How is your Shidi's family doing now? Li Qingyu nodded. He's very well. After Zhongnan sect was forced to join Hehuan sect, the Su family and some other disciples came to Qingqinchan. Now they are safe and well. Shen Qiao sighed in relief. That's good to hear. It looks the situation in Chang'an is not ideal. They probably will not be able to return for some time. Li Qingyu voiced his agreement. Daoist, how is your Wuzhang recovering? If you have time, will you parry with me? He was a fool when it came to the way of the sword. Seeing Shen Qiao was like seeing a sheathed, mysterious, sharp, treasure sword, not wanting to relinquish it, desiring to examine every inch of the other person, though not in intent of a filthy origin. Seeing the other's bright eyes, Shen Qiao couldn't laugh or cry. He had only said one word before Wushi continued the conversation. Qiao is going to advise his disciples now. I'm afraid he has no spare time to waste on you. If you want to parry, why not let this venerable one advise you? Li Qingyu looked at him. Who are you? Wushi's lips curled. If you can defeat this venerable one will naturally tell you. Li Qingyu's gaze drifted downwards, paused on the wooden sword he held in his hand, suddenly shook his head. You don't use the sword often, your knowledge base broad, in the way of the sword, you're not as good as Shen Chiao, and as of now my inner chi cannot compare to yours, no need to have a fight. Wushi smiled amiably. This venerable one has never seen someone who knows themselves so well. You can be the first. Li Qingyu's gaze abruptly sharpened. The two looked at each other. He nodded. Oh, this is Huanyu sect's Zongju. Wushi raised an eyebrow. Looks like you recognize this venerable one. Li Qingyu made a noise in the affirmative. I heard Zongju wildly proclaimed himself #1 in the world. Seeing you today, this was not in falsehood. Seeing these two prepare sword and notch crossbow upon meeting, was completely out of Shen Qiao's expectations. He said, Zongju, Li Qingyu is an esteemed guest of Wuxia sect. His sentence was left unfinished, as Wushi laughed. Then let this venerable one see this esteemed guest's abilities. He stretched out an index finger, fast as lightning, but also graceful and precise. It was indeed the famous spring water finger technique. Shen Chiao had an impulse to stop him, but it was too late. Over there a big noise. Li Qingyu had only pulled out half his sword Qiushui, that half of sword edge was blocked by Wushi's index finger. After the brief contact, Li Qingyu took 3 steps back, sword forced back into its sheath. Wushi then pulled his hand back and stood still, not moving. The difference was clear. But this was expected. Although Li Qingyu was one of the top martial artists of the younger generation, could still not yet hold a conversation with Yan Wushi. As he said himself, his inner chi could not compare to Yan Wushi. It would appear Yan Wushi forced his hand, and was guilty of bullying the Xuanbei. Li Qingyu held his sword and folded his hands in respect, pushing down his rage, slowly said, Yan Zongju's inner chi is domineering, I cannot of course compare. With emphasis on the words inner chi, it meant that he considered the only reason Yan Wushi could win, was not due to his technique or skill, but chi level alone. Prepare sword notch crossbow, on the verge of eruption. Yan Wushi laughed coldly. Blocking his next impulse, Shen Chiao had stepped forward saying, Li Gongzi, the situation with the death of the head of Zhongnan sect, and being forced to join Hehuan sect, surely has repercussions in the Jianghu. I want to know what happened. I don't know if Li Gongzi has time to tell it to me in detail. Li Qingyu glanced at Yan Wushi, then nodded, of course I can. Shen Qiao extended his hand to invite him inside, after you. Then said to Yan Wushi, I don't know if Yan Zongju would like to join us, or has other matters to attend to. As Shen Qiao saw it, Li Qingyu was here as a guest, and was provoked by Yan Wushi for no reason, required an apology. If the two really had a fight, no matter who was injured, it would make things difficult for Wuxia sect. Yan Wushi suddenly smiled, ice melting into spring wind, you guys chat, I'm a bit hungry, I'll go down to the kitchens to see what they have to eat. Odd. Shen Qiao thought, he couldn't see through Yan Wushi's cloudy with a chance of thunder temperament, seeing the other turn and leave, shook his head, returned inside to sit and talk with Li Qingyu. Zhongnan sect as a result of this recent calamity collapsed. For a son of an illustrious household like Zhang Sunsheng it was a small matter, with no sect, he could at least return home, but the other disciples that had made the sect their home were quite pitiful. They were forced to make a stand, or acquiesce to Hehuan sect, becoming Hehuan sect's outer disciples. They could also choose to oppose them, flee to other sects, like King Qinchen's Chunyang sect, and with the chance at Shijiandawai, to stir the undercurrents. In truth, Chunyang sect had gradually become a third force that could stand against Hehuan sect and the Buddhist sects. In the north, those unwilling to give in to Hehuan sect or the Buddhist sects, had come one after the other to seek assistance from Chunyang sect, and to the south, with the Changjiang as a natural barrier, and as Linghuan sect's stronghold, Hehuan sect and the Buddhist sects for the moment had not shown any signs of moving south. Unintentionally planting willow grows into shade. Yi Baikan at the beginning didn't necessarily predict this, but Chunyang sect had been wanting to enter the world. He naturally didn't have a reason to refuse. Hosting Shijiandawai at Chunyang sect also demonstrated where people's intentions strayed. In only half a year, the world's configuration had drastically transformed, making people sigh and lament. Li Qingyu, Shijiandawai will gather many strong martial artists. It'll be a good opportunity to practice. Shizun hopes Daoxian will also attend, reconnect on part of our common Daoist sect origins. Shen Qiao said, including Qi Lang, I have accepted 2 disciples, they've only formally entered training. It's the time for establishing a strong foundation. If I'm not by their side, I'm afraid they'll have no one to advise them, and easily go down the wrong path. Li Qingyu seemed unconcerned. When I was small and training, Shizun would only teach things once, and let us figure out the rest ourselves. Martial training cannot be separate from natural ability. If they don't even have a smidge of caliber, they might as well spend their lives fishing and farming. It's a better way to pass the years. Although the words were harsh, they were not unreasonable, but with Shen Qiao's character, certainly wouldn't be able to say such a thing. He smiled, let me think things over, I'll discuss it with them, and then decide. Li Qingyu nodded. Shen Qiao thought of something, has Li Gongzi heard any news from Xuandu's Han? Li Qingyu, I have not. The last Shen Chiao heard of Uai, was his participation in the ambush against Yan Wushi. After that he had not seen the other. Uai single-mindedly pursued Xuandu's Han's return to the top of the Daoist sects, but this plan seemed doomed from the start, first with Chunyang sect taking the winning advantage, then working closely with Tuju, looking to borrow Tuju's power, but the calculations have yet to pan out, and in the end may just be a bamboo basket retrieving water coming up empty. After the initial pain of the betrayal, all thoughts related to Xuandu's Han, Shen Qiao felt it as if in a rainfog dreamscape, beautiful but not real. Li Qingyu said, if you want to return to Xuandu's Han, I can go ask for Shizun's help. Shen Qiao shook his head and laughed, thank you, but if I'm not relying on my own ability to get something, in the end it won't last long. Li Qingyu saw that he had his own plan, so nodded, and didn't add anything further. The two of them conversed a while. It was approaching noon. The one who came knocking was Wuxia sect's Zhou Yexu. Li Shixian, Zongju, and my Shifu are discussing matters, are not able to host you in person, so specially sent me to invite Li Shixian and Shen Daozang to move to the flower hall for their meal. To go or not to go to Shijiandawai, was a big deal for all of Wuxia sect. Zhao Qiaying must discuss things with Yu Kunchi, to not be able to come herself at this time was only natural. Zhou Yexu was 28 years old, an age where her beauty shone like a flower. She and Li Qingyu's age were similar, and both practiced the sword, could be considered very suited for each other. If anything could start between them, it would be a beautiful story. Yi Baikan himself did not marry, but didn't force his disciples in this matter. Chunyang sect did not have many women disciples. If in the future Li Qingyu also did not marry and focused solely on the way of the sword, it would be no matter. If he wanted to marry and have kids, Wuxia sect's women disciples were head above the rest in terms of appearance, and was a very reasonable choice. Zhao Qiaying let Zhou Yexu come specifically, must have had a thought in a similar vein. However, Li Qingyu did not seem to recognize half a sentiment along these lines. He said, thank you for coming. Since Zhao Zongju is busy, then I don't need to go. Can you prepare 2 sets of meals for me and Shen Daoxian? I want to seek advice from him about the way of the sword. I can stay here and eat while we chat. Zhou Yexu had never met someone so clueless, glared at the other for a while, eventually said fine, didn't turn around before stalking away. After a while, the person who came to deliver their meals was not her but Fan Yuanbei. Shen Chiao as a bystander saw it all clearly, saw how the young girl was maybe interested in Li Qingyu, but Li Qingyu demonstrated no such intention. He could interfere, so pretended not to know. Today's cook was not from the base of the mountain, 3 dishes 1 soup, the taste very average. Shen Chiao, drinking his half bowl of soup, midway through realized he was drinking fish soup. And it appeared to be fish head soup. Looking again at Li Qingyu, Li Fish Head was at the moment with his head bent drinking soup. Not realizing what was what, Shen Qiao suddenly felt it was very funny. He wanted to laugh, but thought that might be unkind, so suppressed it. Li Qingyu, this soup is not bad. Shen Qiao gave a dry smile, didn't know how to respond, could only say, these vegetables are also fresh. Saying this, in his mind suddenly appeared the image of Yan Wushi's face, but he couldn't be the culprit. All things considered, surely the impressive Huanyu sect Zongju could not do such a childish thing? Zhao Qiaying quickly made up her mind. She would bring Fan Yuanbei and Zhou Yexu along to Chunyang sect to attend Shijiandawai. Yu Kunchi would stay behind and look after things. Shen Qiao also wanted to stay, but Zhao Qiaying also expressed her hope that Shen Qiao could go with them. Towards this friend who she had suffered through hardship together, she regarded highly. This time Wuxia's sect didn't have much strength to show, with Zhao Qiaoying alone it would be hard to make a statement. Definitely needed Shen Qiao's assistance. Shen Chiao agreed, left Chaiwu and Yuan Song with homework, asked them to train well with Yu Kunchi. Yuan Song since a young age grew up in an illustrious, grand household, towards Taishan was filled with wonder and boundless curiosity, was quite content. Shaiwu was the Shikshan, but his personality was gentle, often would go along with Yuan Song, only for important matters would he insist. The two of them got along well, letting them interact alone. Shen Chiao wasn't worried. A group of people packed and prepared, set out on their journey. End of the chapter. Stay tuned for more BL.